Madam Speaker, I rise today in appreciation of a great organization in my hometown of Pacoima, California, Champions in Service, and honor them today as Valley Luchadores. This organization is run by two incredible community leaders whose tireless work has transformed countless lives in the San Fernando Valley and beyond. William Blinky Rodriguez and Bobby Arias. Together, they have embodied the essence of leadership and dedicated their lives to promoting peace, hope, and opportunity for the most vulnerable among us. In 1990, tragedy struck Blinky Rodriguez's family when his 17-year-old son, Sonny, was killed in a gang-related violence. Faced with this devastating loss, Blinky could have turned inward, but instead, he channeled his grief into a powerful mission of peace with unwavering faith and determination. Blinky helped broker the Valley Unity Peace Treaty, an agreement that significantly reduced gang violence in the San Fernando Valley, and he gained international recognition for it. In the years that followed, Blinky teamed up with Bobby Arias, an athletic director and educator with a deep passion for helping young people. Together, they founded Champions in Service, an organization committed to preventing gang violence, fostering community engagement, and creating opportunities for those caught in cycles of violence and poverty. Since 1993, Champions in Service has been a beacon of hope. Their street intervention team, made up of dedicated community intervention workers, is on the front lines of violence prevention. These individuals, many of whom have experienced within the communities, mediate conflicts, reduce gang retaliation, and offer critical services such as court advocacy, tattoo removal, and job assistance. These efforts have not only saved lives, but have given countless individuals a second chance. But the work of Champions in Service goes beyond street intervention. Their comprehensive reentry program supports formerly incarcerated individuals as they reintegrate into society, providing everything from housing and employment assistance to educational opportunities and expungement support. They offer mentorship, job readiness programs, and vital mental health services, all aimed at breaking the cycle of violence and incarceration. Mr. Speaker, Bobby Arias, Blinky Rodriguez, and their entire staff are the very definition of champions in service. Their commitment to uplifting those who have been marginalized by poverty, addiction, and trauma is an inspiration. They understand that every individual, no matter their past, deserves the chance to rewrite their future. Through their work, they have helped countless individuals turn away from violence and toward a path of hope, education, and empowerment. As we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, I honor their juvenile justice work of Champions in Service.
Will the gentleman suspend?
Yes.
The chair will receive a message. Madam Secretary. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today to recognize an extraordinary leader in education, Dr. Armida Ornelas, the president of Los Angeles Mission College as a Valley Luchadora. For nearly 30 years, Dr. Ornelas has been a tireless advocate for educational equity, ensuring that community college students, particularly from disenfranchised communities, have access to the resources and opportunities they need to succeed. Dr. Ornelas' journey is a testament to the transformative power of education. Raised in East Los Angeles by immigrant parents from Jalisco, Mexico, she grew up understanding the value of hard work and perseverance. A proud graduate of Garfield High School, Dr. Ornelas went on to pursue her undergraduate studies at UCLA, earning a double major in Chicano studies and sociology. She continued her academic journey with a master's degree in public policy studies from the University of Chicago, and later earned her doctorate from UCLA's School of Education. Dr. Ornelas has had a successful and enduring career in Los Angeles Community College District. Dr. Ornelas served as a faculty member in political science and then served as the vice president of instruction at East Los Angeles College before becoming president at Los Angeles Mission College 3 years ago. Dr. Ornelas' leadership as Los Angeles Mission College has been pivotal. Her vision for the college goes beyond providing quality instruction. She understands that education is a tool that can transform lives and uplift entire communities. Under her guidance, the college has expanded its programs and services to ensure that students not only succeed academically, but are also prepared for the workforce and empowered to make meaningful contributions to their communities. Her dedication to economic and educational opportunities extends beyond the classroom. Dr. Ornelas serves on the boards of the Valley Economic Alliance and the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, where she continues to champion initiatives that improve access to education and job opportunities for low-income and underrepresented individuals. Madam Speaker, Dr. Armida Ornelas' work has touched the lives of countless students and families, giving them the tools to achieve their full potential. It's my honor to pay tribute to Dr. Ornelas for her tireless efforts in advancing education and recognize her as a luchadora during this Hispanic Heritage Month. Madam Speaker, I rise to recognize an extraordinary community leader, advocate, and changemaker, Michelle Fuentes-Miranda, as a Valley luchadora. As the founder and CEO of the Alliance for Community Empowerment, ACE, Michelle has dedicated over 30 years of her life to transforming the futures of at-risk youth and adults. Her unwavering commitment to justice, empowerment, and community building has made a profound impact, not only in Los Angeles, but across California. Michelle's story is one of resilience and dedication. As a granddaughter of migrant farm workers who became successful business owners and community leaders in California's Central Valley, she was inspired by her family's legacy of service. She channeled that inspiration into her life's work, founding ACE in 2013 with a clear mission to provide leadership development, education, and supportive services to high-barrier youth in some of the most underserved communities. Through Michelle's visionary leadership, ACE has grown to become essential in the San Fernando Valley, offering programs that change lives. One of her hallmark achievements is the Youth Build Leadership Development Program, which provides opportunity for younger individuals with hands-on vocational training and support services. ACE's innovative approach empowers young people to create meaningful change in their lives and their communities, breaking the cycles of poverty and violence that too often define their experiences. In 2023, recognizing a growing gap in housing for formerly incarcerated individuals, Michelle launched House of Ruth: Resilience, Unity, Transformation, and Hope, a transitional reentry house that provides a fresh start for those reentering society after incarceration. Her commitment to creating pathways to success for justice-impacted individuals through education, workforce development, and trauma-informed care has been a lifeline for many. Madam Speaker, Michelle Fuentes-Miranda is a tireless advocate for justice, and her impact reaches far beyond the walls of ACE. As Vice Chair of the CARE's First Community Investment Council, she advises Los Angeles County on alternatives to incarceration. Her expertise is also sought on the California DOJ Reentry Roundtable, where she continues to shape policies that promote rehabilitation and community resilience. Michelle's work has been recognized locally, regionally, and nationally. She has received numerous awards, including Woman of the Year in the 45th District of the California State Assembly and the Human Rights Award from the California Association of Human Rights Organizations. Madam Speaker, Michelle Fuentes-Miranda has dedicated her life to lifting others up while continuing to inspire generations to come. It is my honor, it's my honor to honor her for her incredible community service during Hispanic Heritage Month. Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor a cultural gem in the Northeast San Fernando Valley, Tia Chuchas Centro Cultural and Bookstore. As we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, it is fitting that we recognize the profound impact this institution has had on the arts, literacy, and cultural empowerment in our community. For over 23 years, Tia Chuchas has been a transformative force, providing a space where ancestral knowledge and creative expression intersect to enrich lives and foster growth in my district. Founded by renowned author Luis J. Rodriguez, cultural bearer Trini Rodriguez, and community activist Enrique Sanchez, Tia Chuchas emerged from a vision to address the neglect of a historically marginalized community. At a time when the Northeast Valley had no bookstores, art galleries, or cultural spaces, these three visionaries created a sanctuary for wellness, artistic expression, and empowerment. Inspired by the spirit and creativity of Luis Rodriguez's aunt, Maria de Jesus, affectionately known as Tia Chucha, this center has become a home for artists, activists, and community members alike. Tia Chuchas provides a wide range of free to low-cost programs, including visual arts, music, dance, creative writing, Mexica, indigenous language, and cosmology, healing arts, and more. Their intergenerational and bilingual programming is a lifeline for so many, offering opportunities to connect with culture, art, and community. Tia Chuchas is more than a bookstore. It is a source of inspiration and transformation for many. Their independent bookstore and small cross-cultural press, Tia Chuchas Press, continues to promote social activism and amplify voices that have been historically marginalized. Their commitment to making culturally relevant books accessible, representing stories by people of color, and supporting local authors is nothing short of remarkable. The mission of Tia Chuchas is deeply rooted in the belief that art and creativity are essential to the growth and healing of individuals and communities. By fostering a space where everyone can imagine, create, and express themselves, Tia Chuchas is improving the quality of life for future generations to come. As we honor the legacy and ongoing contributions of Tia Chuchas during Hispanic Heritage Month, we recognize that they are more than just a cultural center. They are Valley luchadores for the arts, champions of social justice, and a testament to the power of creativity in bringing about positive change. Congratulations to Tia Chuchas Centro Cultural and Bookstore on nearly 23 years of transformative work. We thank you for your continued dedication to the arts, literacy, and community empowerment. Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor a lifelong leader and advocate for community progress, Ruben Rodriguez, Executive Director of Pueblo y Salud, Inc., as a Valley luchador. Mr. Rodriguez has been a steadfast advocate for more than 32 years, working to improve the social conditions of the Northeast San Fernando Valley and beyond. As the founding board president and current executive director of Pueblo y Salud, known affectionately as PYS, Mr. Rodriguez has been instrumental in shaping the organization's mission to address alcohol, drug, and tobacco abuse prevention, while also focusing on education and community strength. Headquartered in the Northeast San Fernando Valley, PYS has become a guiding force for those seeking better health policies, grassroots involvement, and social justice. Under his leadership, the organization has grown its reach, partnering with local hospitals and community organizations to tackle critical issues like COVID-19 mitigation, youth education, and environmental justice. Mr. Rodriguez's work goes far beyond the walls of Pueblo y Salud. He has been a founding member of the Los Angeles Drug and Alcohol Policy Alliance and the California Alcohol Policy Alliance. His leadership in these coalitions has been vital in shaping alcohol and drug prevention policies throughout California. He has also served as a member and board president of Alcohol Justice, an organization dedicated to holding the alcohol industry accountable for its impacts on our communities. In addition to his work in substance abuse prevention, Mr. Rodriguez has been an enduring advocate for social justice. He has spent decades fighting for better wages, equal access to education, Latino political representation, and comprehensive immigration reform, and the removal of harmful substances from minority communities. His dedication to these issues has inspired countless individuals to join him in the fight for a more just and equitable society. As a proud husband, father, and grandfather, and great-grandfather, Mr. Rodriguez has also made it his personal mission to raise a family of social activists. His daughter, Celeste Rodriguez, has followed his footsteps, serving as the mayor of the city of San Fernando, further extending the legacy of community service and leadership that Mr. Rodriguez has cultivated. I have known Mr. Rodriguez since childhood, and our families share decades of friendship. This connection has only strengthened our commitment to advancing the well-being of the people of the Northeast San Fernando Valley. As we honor Ruben Rodriguez during Hispanic Heritage Month, we recognize his lasting dedication to our community. His leadership at Pueblo y Salud, his advocacy for social justice, and his commitment to the health and well-being of our neighborhoods have earned him the title of a true Valley luchador for community progress. Once again, thank you, Ruben Rodriguez, for your tireless work and for motivating future generations. Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor the remarkable success story of Vallarta Supermarkets and the Gonzalez family, whose dedication and hard work have shaped this grocery store into a cornerstone of the Hispanic community throughout California. The Vallarta family story begins in Jalostotitlan, Jalisco, Mexico, where Enrique Gonzalez Sr. and his 4 brothers grew up on a small farm. Raised with a strong work ethic and a deep sense of family, they immigrated to the United States in the 1960s, seeking the opportunities this country promised. They worked in restaurants, from bussing tables to cooking, and saved every dollar they could with the hope of one day achieving the American dream. That dream began to take shape in 1985 when Enrique Sr. opened the first Vallarta supermarket in Van Nuys, California. What started as a modest 1,000-square-foot carniceria with a small staff and weekly sales of only about $3,500 has since grown into a thriving supermarket chain with 53 supermarket locations across California and nearly 8,000 employees. From the very beginning, Vallarta Supermarkets distinguished itself by offering fresh, authentic Latin foods, catering to the growing Hispanic community that was often overlooked by larger grocery chains. The success of Vallarta Supermarkets reflects their family's commitment to service, integrity, and community. What began as a small family-run business is now a vital resource for thousands of families, offering not only groceries, but also employment opportunities, career advancement, and community support. The Gonzalez family never forgot their roots or the values that brought them here, and they continue to give back to the community they serve. Through charitable donations, school partnerships, and support for local organizations, Vallarta has become a pillar of empowerment for those they serve. Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, the Vallarta Supermarket's legacy is an inspiring testament to the strength of the Hispanic community and the power of perseverance. As Vallarta Supermarkets approaches its 40th anniversary, the family's dedication to customer service and quality products remains unwavering. Their continued commitment to enriching the lives of those in their communities is a shining example of the American dream in action. It is with great pride that we honor the Gonzalez family and Vallarta Supermarkets as Valley Luchadores during Hispanic Heritage Month. Their journey is a reminder of the extraordinary contributions that Latino Americans have made and continue to make throughout our nation. Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor my good friend and mentor, James Acevedo, as a Valley Luchador. James Acevedo is a dedicated champion of civic engagement and a relentless advocate for the political and economic empowerment of Chicanos and Latinos. Born in East Los Angeles to Elvira and Eduardo Acevedo in 1952, James grew up witnessing the deep socioeconomic disparities affecting his community. From an early age, he recognized the need for Latino representation and empowerment, both politically and economically. His journey began in East Los Angeles College, where he met Cesar Chavez and became involved in the grape boycotts and the Chicano moratorium, joining movements that protested both the Vietnam War and the social inequities facing Chicanos at home. At Cal State Los Angeles, Mr. Acevedo continued his activism, becoming chair of MECHA, the Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán, where he organized events that brought together community members and Chicano leaders to celebrate their culture and push for progress. His educational pursuits did not stop there. He went on to earn his master's degree and was selected for the prestigious Coro Fellowship in Public Affairs. During his time at Coro, he further developed his leadership skills under the mentorship of political icons such as Gloria Molina and corporate leaders, all while continuing his graduate studies at USC. Throughout his storied career, James Acevedo has left a legacy as a political strategist and consultant, playing a critical role in more than 100 successful campaigns across the western United States. His work with figures such as Mayor Tom Bradley, Mayor Richard Riordan, then Council President Alex Padilla, and many others helped shape the political landscape of Los Angeles and beyond, ensuring that Latino voices were heard and represented at every level of government. In addition to his political work, Mr. Acevedo has also made significant contributions to the healthcare field and real estate development. As CEO of American Healthcare, he managed hospitals across southeastern Los Angeles and was appointed to the President Clinton's Healthcare Reform Initiative, advocating for better healthcare for the middle class. His leadership extended to the development of areas hardest hit by the 1994 earthquake, where he founded neighborhood empowerment and economic development to build affordable housing in the San Fernando Valley. James Acevedo's civic engagement did not end with his professional achievements. He founded Grapevine Development, where he continues to develop commercial and multifamily projects across California, always advocating for community stakeholders to have a voice in the development of their neighborhoods. Madam Speaker, James Acevedo has spent his life dedicated to creating opportunities for the Latino community, from his days organizing protests and voter outreach to his work as a political consultant and developer. His tireless commitment to civic engagement, social justice, and community empowerment has made him a true Valley luchador for civic engagement. I want to personally also thank James Acevedo for taking an entire 6 months to never accept my answer of no, I'm not running for office. And after 6 months of him approaching me and convincing me that I needed to be the first person from my community to be elected to high office, I went home to my wife, Norma. She didn't know any better, and she said, yes, why don't you do that? 28 years later, I was able to achieve that opportunity then in 1996 to be the first state assemblyman Latino to represent the San Fernando Valley, and then to join the city council along with my good friend, now United States Senator Alex Padilla, and now I get to serve for 12 years now in the United States Congress. Thank you, James Acevedo, for not taking no for an answer. And thank you so much for helping so many of us to achieve what we did not see for ourselves, but what you saw in us to make sure that we can give back to our community. You deserve this recognition and much, much more. Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor Xolo Mariduena, a rising star and proud representative of the Latino community in the world of entertainment. As we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, it is crucial to recognize the trailblazers who are breaking barriers and inspiring future generations, and Xolo Mariduena is one such individual. Through his talent, dedication, and commitment to representing his cultural heritage, Xolo has become a shining example of what it means to be a true Valley luchador for entertainment. Born and raised in Los Angeles, California, Xolo comes from a rich cultural background with roots in Mexico, Cuba, and Ecuador. His journey to stardom is a testament to the power of perseverance and the importance of authentic representation in the entertainment industry. From an early age, Xolo embraced his heritage and the values instilled by his family, and he has used his platform to proudly showcase Latino culture in his work. Xolo Mariduena first captured the public's attention with his role as Miguel Diaz in Cobra Kai, the sequel series to the iconic Karate Kid films. At just 16 years old, Xolo brought depth and nuance to the character, earning widespread praise and solidifying his place as a major talent in Hollywood. His portrayal of Miguel, a young man navigating the challenges of life and martial arts, resonated with audiences worldwide, particularly within the Latino community. In 2023, Xolo took his career to new heights with his leading role as Jaime Reyes in Blue Beetle, marking the first time a Latino superhero has been featured in a live-action film. This role is a significant milestone for Latino representation in Hollywood, and Xolo has embraced it with pride, fully aware of the impact it has on young Latinos seeing themselves reflected in a superhero on the big screen. His commitment to authenticity in portraying Jaime, a character deeply connected to his Mexican-American roots, brings a powerful cultural resonance to the film, showcasing the importance of family, tradition, and community. Beyond his own screen of work, Xolo has ventured into music with the release of his debut single, On My Way, and co-hosts the Lone Lobos podcast with fellow actor Jacob Bertrand. His diverse talents and ventures speak to his passion for storytelling and connecting with audiences in multiple ways. He continues to push boundaries and challenges the norms in the entertainment industry, showing that Latino stories and experiences are not only valid, but essential. Xolo's journey is one of inspiration for the next generation of Latino artists and actors. His ability to navigate the challenges of Hollywood while staying true to his roots is a testament to his character and resilience. By embracing his cultural identity and using his platform to advocate for representation, Xolo is paving the way for a more inclusive and diverse entertainment landscape. Madam Speaker, it is my great honor to recognize Xolo Mariduena as a Valley Luchador for entertainment. His accomplishments as an actor, musician, and advocate for Latino representation makes him a source of pride for the entire Latino community. We are excited to see what the future holds for Xolo as he continues to break barriers and inspire us all. Madam Speaker, I rise today to honor Eva Longoria, a trailblazing Latina who has made indelible contributions to the world of entertainment, philanthropy, and advocacy as a Valley Luchadora. Born in Corpus Christi, Texas, Eva Longoria grew up as the youngest of 4 daughters in a Tejano family. Her early life experiences in South Texas shaped her deep understanding of the socioeconomic disparities that Latinos face. Longoria's pursuit of education led her to earn a Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology from Texas A&M University, Kingsville, and later a master's degree in Chicano Studies from California State University, Northridge in California. Her academic journey reflects her deep commitment to understanding and advocating for the Latino community, especially Latina women in STEM careers. Eva Longoria's breakout role as Gabrielle Solis on Desperate Housewives brought her international recognition, earning her multiple awards, including a Golden Globe nomination and multiple Screen Actors Guild Awards. But her career in entertainment extends far beyond acting. As a producer and director, she has used her platform to bring diverse stories to the forefront, most notably through her production company, Unbelievable, with an emphasis on Eva Entertainment. Her directorial debut with Flamin' Hot garnered critical acclaim and highlighted her versatility and skill in the industry. In addition to her entertainment career, Ms. Longoria has been a successful businesswoman, launching her own fashion and perfume lines and co-owning Angel City FC, a national women's soccer league team. Her influence reaches far beyond Hollywood as she continually advocates for more representation of Latinos in all sectors of society. One of the most impressive aspects of Eva Longoria's career is her commitment to philanthropy. Through her Eva Longoria Foundation, she focuses on closing the educational gap for Latinas and supporting Latina entrepreneurs. She is also the founder of Eva's Heroes, a not-for-profit organization that helps young adults with developmental disabilities, and she serves as a national spokesperson for Padres contra el Cáncer. Her dedication to these causes has earned her the admiration and respect of communities across the country. Beyond her work in the arts and business, Eva Longoria has played an instrumental role in persevering and showcasing the rich history of Latino contributions to the United States. In recognition of her commitment to promoting Latino heritage, she was appointed by President Obama as a commissioner to the National Museum of the American Latino Commission. This prestigious appointment highlights her dedication to ensuring that the stories, artifacts, and experiences of Latinos over the past 500 years are preserved and shared with future generations. The National Museum of the American Latino will provide a permanent home for the vibrant cultural legacy of Latinos, and Eva's involvement is a testament to her deep connection to her heritage and community. Throughout her life, Eva Longoria has used her voice to advocate for issues that matter most to the Latino community, including immigration reform, voter engagement, and education. She continues to be a beacon of strength and leadership, motivating countless Latinos to pursue their dreams and create lasting change for all. Madam Speaker, it is an honor to recognize Eva Longoria as a true Valley luchadora for entertainment. Her contributions to the arts, her unwavering dedication to philanthropy, and her advocacy for Latino empowerment have made her a symbol of pride and inspiration for the entire Latino community. We are grateful for her continued efforts to uplift and transform lives through her work, and we look forward to all of her future accomplishments.